Professor Fernando Remião, Prorector for the Pedagogical Innovation in Sport of the University of Porto. We thank you for the honor that you give by being at the Faculty of Fine Arts to close the Geometry at Fine Arts and Design Faculties, this European encounter of Erasmus partner faculties. Thank you very much.
Good night to everyone. I would like to thank for this invitation, Professor José Paiva, Professor Vasco Cardoso, and it's really an honor to me to be here. And well, I can say it's a great responsibility to say some words after the inspiring keynote of Professor Martin Kemp. What can I say after this presentation? But I know that we are very late, so I'm only going to share with you some thoughts that I had when I was there in sitting and hear the presentation. And I tried to figure out the role of geometry in my life. Okay, I study pharmaceutical sciences. And I'm professor of toxicology. I don't know if you know what is toxicology, but it's someone that is always studying the bad side of the chemical compounds, okay? It could be pharmaceutical drugs, it could be abuse drugs, or any other xenobiotics. And I was thinking the role of geometry on it, if it is important or not. And I was realizing that it was extremely important, and the absence of this kind of skills caused a lot of pain in our society. When I was studying at Faculty of Pharmacy, I remember very well that I entered the faculty. Well, I could not draw a table or a chair in a white paper, and I still not able to do it. And my colleagues at the faculty at the time didn't do it at all also. So we started with chemistry, and I remember very well a professor, Sinestevich. He went to the classes with some plastic models to construct these compounds and show us that the compounds had not 2 dimensions, but 3 dimensions. Well, it was very difficult to us to do it. We cannot imagine this kind of stuff, because in the paper, it should be the same. And I was there, I was thinking, yeah, this was a really good professor, because he tried to show us that the compounds were not 2 dimensions, they were 3 dimensions. But when I went to the textbooks, there was only 2 dimensions. So I could not imagine the compounds like 3 dimensions. I didn't have geometry in my high school, so I didn't care about it. And most of my colleagues didn't care. So Professor Sinestevich leaves the class, and we went to the other classes, and in fact, we don't care about 3 dimensions of mathematics. Well, I became a teacher, and I started to study toxicology, and I realized that there were some compounds that seemed to be equal, but in fact, they were not. One of the compounds has a name, it's thalidomide. Perhaps most of you don't know what it is, but it was a drug that was done, prescribed to people to the women that were pregnant, and it caused pain because at the end, the kids was born with with a great disease that they call phocomelia. Well, it was a very painful situation, most of the time in Europe, because in the United States it was not allowed this drug. But what happened is that the drug, when it was studied before it entered to the market, the chemistry, were not aware about the importance of this kind of difference between two compounds that seems to be equal, but they were opposite. We call that in chemistry enantiomers. One compound is a mirror reflection of the other. And in fact, it's like twins, okay? You know this, I'm not explaining something that this to you. So, in fact, what we know about thalidomide is one of hand is much more toxic than the other. But the chemistry at the time didn't care about this. The toxicologists at the time didn't care about this. And the final effect was the phocomelia for 3,000 kids in Europe. So, if geometry could be done in a way that we were so much skilled on it, to be aware about the difference of the compounds in a three-dimension scheme and not in a two-dimension scheme, perhaps the toxicologists at the time would be trying to study the two different compounds in order to see if the results at the end will be different. 3 or 4 years ago, I have a student that came to me and asked me to do research in toxicology with catenones. It's a abuse drug that's very used by kids, and in fact, it started with studies, and she told me, I would like to study the enantiomeric compounds, so I would like to study if they are different. And I told her at the time, well, it's very difficult to do this kind of the stuff because it's difficult to isolate the compounds, and I'm not sure if at the end we will have any difference of the results. But she insisted, no, I want to study this. And say, okay, let's try. It was a master's student. And, well, she isolated the compounds, she started to do some toxicity studies, and she had different results. One of the compounds, one hand, was more toxic than the other. We made a small paper about it. I was not expecting a lot of it. We sent it to a very nice journal, and the editor said, well, these quite surprising results. No one studied this. Publish it. Yeah, we accepted the paper. I was astounded. What he was saying, no one cares about this. In toxicology, even after thalidomide story, no one cares about geometry. So now she's my PhD student. And she continued the studies, she continued to obtain different results for these two molecules that we can represent quite similar. They have the same molecular weight, they have everything is equal, but they are opposite. The mirror, the reflection of the other. Well, it was what I was thinking there when I was hearing Professor Martin Kemp's presentation. I would like also to share with you my thoughts, to final remarks, and the importance of geometry as a skill in the learning process, even for a toxicologist. Thank you very much for it.
Member of the Scientific Committee of the Geometry and Fine Arts Design Faculties European Encounter of Erasmus Partner Faculties, dear keynote speakers, dear participants. Now that we are near the closing moment of this encounter, on behalf of our faculty, we want to thank you very much for your involvement and for your participation. I'm sure that you agree that we learned so much, that we promoted geometry, we accomplished our aims. This is also the moment to address our strongest thanks and recognition to all of those who had helped us to make this event reality. The Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology, the University of Porto, the Faculty of Fine Arts, the Junta de Freguesia de Bonfim, our students, the Research Institute in Art, Design and Society, the sponsors and partners, the keynote speakers, the committees, and a special thanks to our volunteers.